Imagine this. You wake up in the dead of night, darkness surrounds you, you can't move, you can't speak. Scream, something is terribly wrong. You're trapped inside your own body. This is the terrifying reality of sleep paralysis, a condition where you are conscious but unable to move or speak, often accompanied by hallucinations. These are not just nightmares, they are chilling, waking nightmares that linger long after the sun rises. Jake woke with a jolt. His heart pounded in his chest. He was lying on his back, his body frozen. Panic surged through him. He tried to call out, but no sound came. That's when he saw him. A tall, shadowy figure stood in the corner of his room. The man wore a wide-brimmed hat that hid his face. Jake strained to see, his fear growing. The figure took a step closer. Jake wanted to scream, to run, but his body refused to obey. The man in the hat just stood there, his presence a heavy weight on Jake's chest. Then, as quickly as he appeared, the figure vanished. Jake lay there, gasping for breath, the image of the hat seared into his mind. Emily woke to a soft whisper. It seemed to come from the foot of her bed. She opened her eyes and saw nothing. She tried to sit up, but her body was unresponsive. The whispering continued, growing louder. It was a woman's voice, raspy and chilling. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She felt a cold hand on her ankle slowly creeping up her leg. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a malevolent wind. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. The pressure on her leg grew stronger, more insistent. Then as abruptly as it began, it stopped. The whispering faded, leaving Emily trembling in the silence. Marcus woke to a strange scratching sound. He looked up at his ceiling. It was moving. The shadows seemed to writhe and twist, forming a grotesque shape. He tried to turn away, but his body was paralyzed. The scratching grew louder, more insistent. The shape in the ceiling descended, its edges solidifying into something monstrous. It had multiple eyes that blinked slowly, watching him. Marcus felt a surge of primal terror. He wanted to scream, to run, but he was completely helpless. The thing in the ceiling lowered itself closer, its eyes boring into his. Then, with a sickening lurch, it vanished back into the shadows. Marcus lay there, heart pounding. The image of those eyes burned into his brain. Sarah woke with a start. She felt a presence in the room. Her eyes darted to the mirror across from her bed. A chill ran down her spine. The figure in the mirror was not her. It was a grotesque mockery of her, with a twisted smile and empty eyes. The figure raised its hand, beckoning. Sarah tried to turn away, but her body refused. The figure in the mirror began to crawl out, its movements jerky and unnatural. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't take it anymore. She had to break free. With a desperate surge of will, she forced her eyes open. The mirror was empty. She was alone. But the image of that twisted smile lingered, a haunting reminder of the stranger in the mirror. These chilling tales offer a glimpse into the terrifying world of sleep paralysis. They highlight the vulnerability we experience in that strange state between wakefulness and sleep. The feeling of being trapped, helpless, and terrified is a universal human fear. But for those who experience sleep paralysis, these fears become a terrifying reality. Scientists offer explanations for sleep paralysis, attributing it to disruptions in the sleep cycle. They point to factors like stress, sleep deprivation, and irregular sleep patterns. They explain the hallucinations as a blending of dream states with wakefulness. But for those who have experienced the raw terror of sleep paralysis, the scientific explanations often fall short. The stories persist, the whispers in the dark, the shadowy figures, the feeling of an unseen presence. These accounts defy easy explanations. They leave us wondering if there is more to sleep paralysis than science can explain. Are these simply hallucinations, or do they offer a glimpse into something beyond our understanding? Have you ever woken in the night, unable to move, with the feeling that something is watching you? Have you ever heard whispers in the dark or seen shadows move in the corner of your eye? Perhaps you too have brushed against the chilling reality of sleep paralysis and felt the terror that lies just beyond the veil of sleep. Gap 3S. Lisa woke up to the sound of her own breathing. It was loud, too loud. She tried to move, but her body was frozen. Panic set in as she realized she was not alone. A dark figure loomed over her, its eyes glowing red. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figure leaned closer, whispering her name. Lisa's heart raced, her mind screaming for her to wake up. Suddenly the figure vanished, leaving her gasping for breath, drenched in sweat. Have you ever experienced something similar? Terrifying episodes like these are often the result of sleep paralysis, a phenomenon where the mind wakes up before the body. During this state, it's not uncommon to experience vivid hallucinations and an overwhelming sense of dread. But why does this happen, and what is the science behind these horrifying experiences? Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the mysteries of sleep paralysis and uncover the chilling truths that lie within our own minds. Gap 3S. Tom felt a weight on his chest. He opened his eyes to see a shadowy figure sitting on him. He tried to push it off, but his arms wouldn't move. The figure's face was a void, a black hole that seemed to suck in all light. Tom's breath quickened, his heart pounding in his ears. The figure leaned in, its cold breath on his face. Just as he thought he would suffocate, the figure disappeared, leaving him gasping for air. Have you ever felt a haunting weight pressing down on you, leaving you powerless and petrified? This phenomenon, often experienced during sleep paralysis, is one of the most terrifying aspects of the human mind. The sensation of an invisible force holding you down, the inability to move or scream, and the presence of malevolent entities are common themes reported by those who have lived through it. But what causes these nightmarish experiences? Is it a mere trick of the brain, or is there something more sinister at play? As we continue our exploration, we will uncover the psychological and physiological factors that contribute to these episodes and delve into the stories of those who have faced the haunting weight in the dead of night. Stay with us as we unravel the layers of fear and mystery that surround sleep paralysis and discover what lies beneath the surface of our darkest dreams. Gap 3S. Anna woke to the sound of footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, and getting closer. She tried to turn her head, but her body was paralyzed. The footsteps stopped at the foot of her bed. She felt a presence, something malevolent. A cold hand touched her foot, sending a jolt of fear through her. She wanted to scream, to run, but she was trapped. The hand moved up her leg, its touch icy and painful. Just as she thought she would go mad, the touch disappeared, leaving her trembling in the dark. Have you ever experienced the terror of being unable to move while knowing something sinister is near? This is another chilling aspect of sleep paralysis, where the mind is awake, but the body remains trapped in the grip of sleep. The sensation of an unseen force, the sound of footsteps, and the icy touch of a malevolent being are common themes reported by those who have faced this silent stalker. These experiences raise unsettling questions. Are these sensations merely the result of our brains misfiring neurons, or do they hint at something more? Could these shadowy figures be manifestations of our deepest fears, or perhaps something that exists beyond our understanding? Join us as we delve deeper into the enigma of sleep paralysis. We will explore the stories of those who have encountered this silent stalker, and examine the scientific explanations behind these terrifying episodes. Through their accounts, we will uncover the thin line between reality and nightmare, and seek to understand the true nature of the horrors that lurk in the shadows of our minds. Gap 3S. David woke to a feeling of dread. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. A shadowy figure stood at the end of his bed, its eyes glowing a sickly yellow. It moved closer, its form shifting and changing. David's heart raced, his mind screaming for him to wake up. The figure reached out, its hand cold and clammy. Just as it touched his face, he woke up, his body drenched in sweat. The image of the figure burned into his mind. This encounter is not unique. Many who suffer from sleep paralysis report similar experiences, shadowy figures that seem to manipulate the very fabric of their nightmares. These entities, often described as dark, shifting forms with piercing eyes, evoke a primal fear that leaves a lasting impression on the mind. What is it about these shadowy figures that makes them so universally terrifying? Are they simply projections of our subconscious fears, or do they represent something more sinister? Could they be echoes from another dimension, or perhaps entities that feed on our fear and vulnerability? In this section, we will explore the phenomenon of shadow people in sleep paralysis. We will hear from those who have faced these terrifying apparitions and examine the psychological and neurological factors that may contribute to their appearance. Through these stories and scientific insights, we aim to uncover the truth behind these haunting figures that grasp at the edges of our reality. Join us as we delve into the shadow's grasp, seeking to understand the nature of these dark entities and their connection to our deepest fears. The answers may lie just beyond the veil of sleep, waiting to be discovered. Gap 3S. Rachel woke to a feeling of suffocation. She opened her eyes to see a dark figure sitting on her chest. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth a gaping maw. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure leaned in, its breath cold and foul. Rachel's heart pounded, her mind screaming for her to wake up. Just as she thought she would pass out, the figure disappeared, leaving her gasping for air, the memory of its hollow eyes haunting her. Sleep paralysis is a phenomenon that affects countless people across the globe. The sensation of being awake but unable to move, coupled with the presence of a malevolent entity, is a shared experience that transcends cultures and ages. This suffocating presence, often described as sitting on the chest, is a recurring theme in these terrifying episodes. What causes these horrifying visions? Are they merely the result of our brains misfiring as we transition between sleep stages, or is there something more sinister at play? Stories like Rachel's suggest that these experiences are more than just nightmares. They are encounters with something that defies explanation. In this segment, we will delve into the science and folklore surrounding sleep paralysis and the suffocating presence. We will hear from experts who study the neurological underpinnings of these episodes and from those who believe in the supernatural explanations. By examining both perspectives, we aim to shed light on this dark and suffocating phenomenon. Join us as we explore the suffocating presence, seeking to understand its origins and the impact it has on those who experience it. The answers may reveal much about the boundaries between our waking world and the shadowy realm of sleep. Gap 3S. Mark woke to a feeling of being watched. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. A shadowy figure stood in the corner of his room, its eyes glowing red. It moved closer, its form shifting and changing. Mark's heart raced, his mind screaming for him to wake up. The figure reached out, its hand cold and clammy. Just as it touched his face, he woke up, his body drenched in sweat. The image of the figure burned into his mind. This sensation of being watched, coupled with the inability to move, is another common experience during episodes of sleep paralysis. Unlike the suffocating presence, this unseen watcher often stands silently in the shadows, its mere presence enough to instill a deep primal fear. What is it about these shadowy figures that terrifies us so deeply? Are they manifestations of our subconscious fears, or do they represent something more otherworldly? In this segment, we will explore the psychological and cultural aspects of these shadowy watchers. We'll hear from those who have experienced these terrifying visions and from experts who study the phenomenon. By examining the stories and the science, we aim to understand why so many people encounter these shadowy figures during sleep paralysis and what they might represent. Join us as we delve into the mystery of the unseen watcher, seeking to uncover the truth behind these chilling encounters. The answers may reveal much about the dark corners of our own minds and the boundaries between reality and the unknown. Gap 3S. Laura woke to the sound of whispering. It was soft, almost inaudible, but it sent chills down her spine. She tried to move, but her body was paralyzed. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder, its touch icy and painful. Laura's heart raced, her mind screaming for her to wake up. Just as she thought she would go mad, the whispering stopped, leaving her trembling in the dark. These whispering shadows are another common element in sleep paralysis. The sensation of hearing voices when no one is there can be incredibly unsettling. Often these whispers are unintelligible, but they carry a sense of urgency and malevolence. What causes our minds to conjure up such auditory hallucinations? Are they merely a byproduct of our brain's inability to fully wake up, or do they signify something more sinister lurking in the shadows of our subconscious? In this segment, we will delve into the phenomenon of auditory hallucinations during sleep paralysis. We will hear from individuals who have experienced these chilling whispers, and from experts who study the brain's complex sleep mechanisms. By examining these accounts and the science behind them, we aim to shed light on why our brains produce these eerie sounds and what they might signify. Join us as we explore the whispering shadows, seeking to understand the psychological and neurological basis for these frightening experiences. The answers may reveal new insights into the mysterious and often terrifying world of sleep paralysis. Gap 3S. Kevin woke to a feeling of dread. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. A shadowy figure stood at the end of his bed, its eyes glowing a sickly yellow. It moved closer, its form shifting and changing. Kevin's heart raced, his mind screaming for him to wake up. The figure reached out, its hand cold and clammy. Just as it touched his face, he woke up, his body drenched in sweat. The image of the figure burned into his mind. This experience is a haunting reminder of the terrifying hallucinations that often accompany sleep paralysis. The shifting shadow represents another facet of this enigmatic condition. Unlike the whispering shadows, these visual hallucinations can be even more disturbing, as they bring our deepest fears to life right before our eyes. But what causes our minds to conjure such vivid and frightening images? Are they manifestations of our subconscious fears, or do they hint at something more otherworldly? In this segment, we will delve into the phenomenon of visual hallucinations during sleep paralysis. We will hear from individuals who have encountered these terrifying visions, and from experts who study the intricate workings of the brain during sleep. By examining these accounts and the science behind them, we aim to uncover the reasons behind these nightmarish apparitions and what they might signify. Join us as we explore the shifting shadow, seeking to understand the psychological and neurological basis for these chilling experiences. The answers may offer new insights into the mysterious and often terrifying world of sleep paralysis. Gap 3S. Olivia woke to a feeling of suffocation. She opened her eyes to see a dark figure sitting on her chest. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth a gaping maw. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure leaned in, its breath cold and foul. Olivia's heart pounded, her mind screaming for her to wake up. Just as she thought she would pass out, the figure disappeared, leaving her gasping for air, the memory of its hollow eyes haunting her. This chilling encounter adds another layer to the complex and terrifying phenomenon of sleep paralysis. Known as the Old Hag or Night Hag, the suffocating presence has been reported across various cultures for centuries. But what is it about this specific hallucination that makes it so universally feared? In this segment, we will delve into the psychological and cultural aspects of the suffocating presence. We will hear from individuals who have experienced this horrifying entity and from experts who study the intersection of sleep, culture, and fear. By exploring these narratives and the science behind them, we hope to uncover why our minds conjure such a paralyzing figure during our most vulnerable moments. Join us as we attempt to understand the suffocating presence, seeking to unravel the mystery behind this age-old nightmare and its grip on the human psyche. The answers may not only explain this particular vision, but also shed light on the broader enigma of sleep paralysis and its haunting manifestations. Gap 3S. Ethan woke to a feeling of being watched. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. A shadowy figure stood in the corner of his room, its eyes glowing red. It moved closer, its form shifting and changing. Ethan's heart raced, his mind screaming for him to wake up. The figure reached out, its hand cold and clammy. Just as it touched his face, he woke up, his body drenched in sweat. The image of the figure burned into his mind. Sleep paralysis often brings with it not just a sense of suffocation, but also the presence of an ominous watcher. This shifting shadow is a common yet terrifying apparition experienced by countless individuals. Its form is inconsistent, morphing and changing, making it all the more unsettling. In this segment, we will explore the unsettling phenomenon of the shifting shadow, delving into personal accounts and expert analyses. What is it about this spectral entity that makes it so universally feared? Is it a manifestation of our deepest anxieties, or does it have a more sinister origin? Through the lens of psychology, neuroscience, and cultural studies, we will attempt to decode the mystery behind the shifting shadow. By understanding this fearsome apparition, we may uncover deeper truths about the nature of sleep paralysis and the dark corners of the human mind. Stay with us as we journey into the heart of darkness, seeking to illuminate the unknown and confront the shifting shadow that haunts our restless nights.